Hi everyone, and welcome back to another lesson. I think this lesson is going to be quite an interesting one as we're going to go through an entire IELTS academic reading paper. This paper has been taken from the Cambridge IELTS Academic 14 book, Practice Test 1. So if you have the book, you can follow along there and make your notes, or you can follow along with this video lesson. Alright then, let's get started. We're going to be using the strategies and tips that we have been learning in the previous lessons. If you have missed out on those lessons, you can always go back and have a look. Now let's look at passage 1. We'll start with the most important part, which is reading the instructions. First, we'll look at the instructions under the passage before we look at the questions. It says, you should spend about 20 minutes on questions 1 to 13, which are based on reading passage 1. Alright. Let's look at the questions and the instructions there. The first chunk of questions we have are questions 1 through 8, and the instructions say, complete the notes below. Choose one word only from the passage for each answer. So be mindful here. You're only allowed to write one word taken from the passage. Anything more or not from the passage will be marked incorrect. Now here we can see that this question type is short answer questions. Moving on to questions 1 to 8, I'm going to go ahead and underline any keywords that I might think will help me find the answer in the paragraphs. Question 1, Magical Kingdom, stands out to me because it's already in inverted commas, and also I'm going to underline help develop. Question 2, Board games and turn taking. Question 3, Populations and grown, and opportunities and limited. Question 6, increased in schools. Question 7, difficult to find, support, and new policies. And number 8, research and impact of play, and rest of childs. Now that we have our keywords underlined and in mind, let's find them in the passage and also find the answers. Remember, the answers will come in order, so this will make it easier for us to find the answers. We'll start with paragraph 1, using our skimming and scanning skills to find the answer. I can see one keyword that we've underlined from the questions, which is Magical Kingdom, so it kind of gives me the idea that the answer is coming up. Skimming through, the sentence that stands out to me to find the answer to question 1 is, this fantasy is helping her take her first steps towards capacity for creativity, so it will have important repercussions in her adult life. Take her first steps towards has the same implication as develops, so we can say that the answer to question 1 is creativity. On to question number 2. Looking out for the keywords board game and turn taking. Skimming through paragraph 2, we can see that these keywords are in the last sentence. Later on, when they tire of this and settle down with the board game, she's learning about the need to follow rules and take turns with a partner. The answer here is rules, but it doesn't come out like this exactly, which means it has been paraphrased. How? The question has been shortened by just asking us what board games involve, but in the paragraph it says what the child learns when she's settled with a board game and what she learns. Same meaning, but worded differently. This is exactly why understanding paraphrasing, vocabulary, and meaning is important. Moving on to question 3. We'll quickly skim through the next couple of paragraphs till we find the answer. Paragraph 3 and 4 do not contain the answer to question 3, so let's search in paragraph 5. Also remember that some paragraphs may not have the answer and some paragraphs may contain more than one answer. The sentence, but we live in changing times, and white bread is mindful of a worldwide decline in play, pointing out that over half the people in the world now live in cities. The key word here is half the people in the world now live in cities. If we look at the question, it says, population of blank have grown. Again, this has been paraphrased. The word population and half the people in the world relate to each other, as population means all the inhabitants of a particular place. This also is a recent change that affects children's play. So that means the answer to number 3 is cities. Questions 4 and 5 can be written in any order as long as they are correct. So let's go ahead and find the answers. The question asks us to find the fears that limit opportunities for free play. Luckily for us, the answer can still be found in paragraph 5. Here, outdoor play is curtailed by perceptions of risk to do with traffic, as well as parents' increased wish to protect their children from being victims of crime. The lead-in sentence to this is, the opportunities for free play, which I experienced almost every day of my childhood, are becoming increasingly scarce. Where increasingly scarce is another way of saying limited. Also, the other way of describing fear is by speaking about the parents' wish to protect their children. So the answers are traffic and crime. The answer to question 6 can also be found in the same paragraph where it says, earlier is better, which is leading to greater competition in academic learning and schools. Another way of saying increased, which is the word from the question, is greater, which is the word in the paragraph. So that means the answer to question 6 is competition. For question 7, we're looking for why it's difficult to find something to support new policies. Let's see if we can find the answer in the next paragraph, which is paragraph 6. The answer can be found in the last sentence of the paragraph. But what they often lack is the evidence to base policies on. Lack of evidence is our key phrase. When you lack something, it means it's not there, in turn making it difficult to find. So here the answer is evidence. And for the last short answer question, question 8, we have to find out the impact of play on the rest of the child's blank. We'll skim through till we get to paragraph 8, where we'll find the answer in the last part of the sentence. There is very little data on the impact it has on the child's later life. Later life, rest of the child's life, so the answer to question 8 is life. Now we're going to move on to questions 9 to 13. As we can see here, these are true, false, and or not given questions. The instructions read as follows. Do the following statements agree with the information given in reading passage 1? They have also reminded us what each option means. True, if the statement agrees with the information. False, if the statement contradicts the information. And not given if there is no information on this. Let's read the questions first. I'll emphasize the key words as well. Number 9. Children with good self-control are known to be likely to do well at school later on. The way a child plays may provide information about possible medical problems. Playing with dolls was found to benefit girls' writing more than boys' writing. Children had problems thinking up ideas when they first created the story with Legos. And last but not least, number 13, people nowadays regard children's play as less significant than they did in the past. Alright, now on to finding the answers. The good thing here is that we have already gone through paragraphs 1 to 8, so we know that we can find the remaining answers in the paragraphs after that. Paragraph 11 will help us identify if question 9 is true, false, and or not given. In a study carried out by Baker with toddlers and young preschoolers, she found that children with greater self-control solve problems more quickly. The reasoning? This sort of evidence makes us think that giving children the chance to play will make them more successful problem solvers in the long run. So, children with self-control do well or more successful in the long run, which is later on, so the answer is true. On to question 10. The way a child plays may provide information about possible medical problems. We'll skim through paragraphs 11 to 13 and then zone in on paragraph 13 where Dr. Gibson says playful behavior is also an important indicator of healthy social and emotional development. Go on to read and we see that it gives us important clues or provides info about their well-being and useful in the diagnosis of neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, which are possible medical problems. Here, the way a child plays can be used to identify medical problems like autism, so the answer is true. For question 11, playing with dolls was found to benefit girls' handwriting more than boys' handwriting. Moving down to paragraph 14, which we'll use to help us find the answer. In this paragraph, they are comparing playful and instructional stimuli, but there is no comparison between girls' handwriting and boys' handwriting, so the answer is not given. Question 12. Children had problems thinking up ideas when they first created the story with Lego. Still on paragraph 14 and a little further down onto lines 3 to 5, children wrote longer and better structured stories when they first played with dolls representing characters in the story. In the latest study, children first created their story with Lego, with similar results. Here, the lines show the fact that children produce longer and better structured stories when playing with dolls and Legos. They do not face any problems there, making the answer false. And the last question for this passage, people nowadays regard children's play as less significant than they did in the past. We'll find the answer in the last paragraph, line 1. Somehow, the importance of play has been lost in recent decades. It's regarded as something trivial or even as something negative that contrasts with work. Here, nowadays, which is in correlation with in recent decades, children's play has become less significant, something trivial. So the answer is true. That was passage 1. Now let's decode passage 2. Questions 14 to 26 will be based on this passage. As always, let's look at the questions and the instructions for the same. The question type here is matching paragraphs. Now remember, when it comes to matching question types, the answers will not come in order, making it more time-consuming. So what I would advise is that when you're practicing this paper in your own time, skip these questions and come back to them at the end. But we'll go through them now. The approach we're going to take here is to quickly scan through each paragraph and get a general idea of each one. Again, we can do this by reading the first and last sentence of each paragraph or skim and scan through each one. The instructions are: reading passage 2 has 7 paragraphs, A through G. Which paragraph contains the following information? Note, you may use any letter more than once. The questions are as follows. Number 14, a description of how people misused a bike sharing scheme. An explanation of why a proposed bike sharing scheme was turned down. A reference to a person being unable to profit their work. An explanation of the potential savings a bike sharing scheme would bring. And number 18, a reference to the problems a bike sharing scheme was intended to solve. You can take a few moments to go through the paragraphs. Alright, now that you've had some time to go through the paragraphs, let's start answering the questions. For question 14, we need to find the paragraph that gives us a description of how people misused a bike sharing scheme. Now in paragraph E, line 4, the system, however, was prone to vandalism and theft. After every weekend, there would be always a couple of bikes missing. Molinar says, I have really no idea what people did with them. Point to note, vandalism and theft and bikes missing equal misused a bike sharing scheme. So the answer is E. Number 15, which is an explanation of why a proposed bike sharing scheme was turned down. Now in paragraph C, lines 6 to 7, nevertheless, the council unanimously rejected the plan. They said that the bicycle belongs to the past. They saw a glorious future for the car. Point to note, rejected equals was turned down, so the answer is C. Moving on to question 16, where we have to find a reference to a person being unable to profit their work. Now in paragraph F, last line, but financially, I didn't really benefit from it because I never filed for a patent. Note, financially didn't benefit equals unable to profit. So the answer will be paragraph F. For question 17, we have to find which paragraph gives us an explanation of the potential savings a bike sharing scheme would bring. In paragraph C, Schimmelpenninck explained his idea to the city council. It turned out that a white bicycle per person per kilometer would cost the municipality only 10% of what it contributed to the public transport per person per kilometer. Note, would cost the municipality only 10% equals potential savings. So the answer will be C. And the final question for this question type is question 18. We're looking for a reference to the problems a bike sharing scheme was intended to solve. We have to go up to paragraph A for this and look at lines 3 to 5. They believe the scheme, which was known as the Witte-Fitzen Plan, was an answer to perceived threats of air pollution and consumerism. Note, was an answer to the perceived threats of air pollution and consumerism equals the problems intended to solve, which makes paragraph A the answer. Now moving on to the next set of questions for this passage. For questions 19 and 20, we have to choose two letters from A through E. We have to find out which two of the following statements below are made in the text about Amsterdam's bike sharing scheme of 1999. Let's look at the statements now. A. It was initially opposed by the government department. B. It failed when a partner in the scheme withdrew the support. C. It aimed to be more successful than Copenhagen scheme. D. It was made possible by a change in people's attitudes. And E. It attracted interest from a range of bike designers. Since we already have an idea about what the passage is about, we'll just need to give it a quick once-over to see if we missed out anything. If we cruise down to paragraph D, lines 7 through 9, times had changed, he recalls. People had become more environmentally conscious, and the Danish experiment had proved that bike sharing was a real possibility. A new Witte Fietsen plan was launched in 1999 in Amsterdam. This means the Amsterdam bike sharing scheme of 1999 started or launched because people's attitude towards the environment was positive, so D is one of our answers. Reading on, in paragraphs E, lines 7 and 8, but the biggest blow came when Postbank decided to abolish the chip card because it wasn't profitable. This means the partner, Postbank, withdrew its support for the scheme, making B the other answer. So our answers are B, it failed when a partner in the scheme withdrew the support, and D, it was made possible by a change in people's attitudes. And the good thing here is that it doesn't matter what order you write the answers on your answer sheet. Now the same thing goes for questions 21 and 22. Let's have a look. Which two of the following statements are made in the text about Amsterdam today? A. The majority of residents would like to prevent all cars from entering the city. B. There is little likelihood of the city having another bike sharing scheme. C. More trips in the city are made by bike than any other form of transport. D. A bike sharing scheme would benefit residents who use public transport. And E. The city has a reputation as a place that welcomes cyclists. We're going to go down to paragraph G and look at lines 1 to 3. The paragraph starts with, in Amsterdam today. It's regarded as one of the two most cycle-friendly capitals in the world, pointing us to E as the answer. As we read ahead in the paragraph, lines 6 and 7, people who travel on the underground don't carry their bikes around, but often they need additional transport to reach their final destination. Point to note here, the bike sharing scheme is very important for people who use underground tubes because they need additional transport, or bikes, to get to their expected destination, giving us the answer D. So again, the answers in any order are D, a bike sharing scheme would benefit residents who use public transport, and E, the city has a reputation as a place that welcomes cyclists. And finally, on to the last chunk of questions for the passage, questions 23 to 26. From the first look, we can see that the question type is summary completion, and our instructions are as follows. Complete the summary below. Choose one word only from the passage for each answer. Let's go through each of the questions now. Number 23, the first bike sharing scheme was the idea of the Dutch group Provo. The people who belonged to this group were. Let's quickly skim from the beginning of the passage. Again, what will happen here is that the answers will come in order. Skimming through paragraph A, lines 2 and 3, Provo, the organization that came up with the idea, was a group of Dutch activists who wanted to change society. So the answer would be activists. Number 24, they were concerned about damage to the environment and believed that the bike sharing scheme would draw attention to these issues. This answer can also be found in the same paragraph. Going on to question 25. As well as painting some bikes white, they handed out blank that condemned the use of cars. Still on paragraph A, lines 5 to 7, in the center of Amsterdam, they painted a small number of used bikes white. They also distributed leaflets describing the dangers of cars and inviting people to use the white bikes. Point to note, distributed equals handed out. Describing the dangers of cars equals condemn the use of cars. So the answer here is leaflets. And finally, question 26. However, the scheme was not a great success. almost as quickly as Provo left the bikes around the city, the blank took them away. According to Schimmelpenninck, the scheme was intended to be symbolic. The idea was to get people thinking about the issues. We can find the next answer in paragraph B, lines 4 to 6. The police were opposed to Provo's initiatives, and almost as soon as the white bikes were distributed around the city, they removed them. Point to note, left the bikes around the city equals bikes were distributed. Took them away, removed them. So the answer is police. All right, we've completed 2/3 of this reading paper. Let's move on to the final passage, which will cover questions 27 to 40. We'll go through the first set of questions and instructions for this passage, which are questions 27 to 31. We'll look at the following statements, questions 27 to 31, and list of researchers below. Match each statement with the correct researchers A through F. Write the correct letter A through F. Note, you may use any letter more than once. Starting with question 27, hotel managers need to know what would encourage good staff to remain. The actions of managers may make staff feel they shouldn't move to different employers. Little is done in the hospitality industry to help workers improve their skills. Staff are less likely to change their jobs if cooperation is encouraged. And last but not least, dissatisfaction with pay is not the only reason why hospitality workers change jobs. Now let's look at the list of researchers. A. Pfeiffer. B. Lucas. C. Merodis et al. D. Ng and Sorensen. E. Ensign Sigao. And F. Deary. Let's start with question 27. Hotel managers need to know what would encourage good staff to remain. If we scan through paragraph 8, first and last line, it is essential for hotel managers to develop HRM practices that enable them to inspire and retain competent employees. Ensign Sigao in 2000. This implies that it is beneficial for hotel managers to understand what practices are most favorable to increase employee satisfaction and retention. Keynote, inspire means encourage, retention, staff to remain, giving us the answer, which is E. Number 28. The actions of managers may make staff feel they shouldn't move on to different employers. We'll go down and scan paragraph 5, line 1. Ng and Sorensen, in 2008, demonstrated that when managers provide recognition to employees, motivate employees to work together, and remove obstacles preventing effective performance, employees feel more obligated to stay with the company. Keynote, employees feel more obligated to stay with the company equals staff feel they shouldn't move to a different employer. So the answer here is D. On to 29. Little is done in the hospitality industry to help workers improve their skills. We'll have to go up a paragraph and scan paragraph 4, starting with the first line. Lucas also points out that the substance of HRM practices does not appear to be designed to foster constructive relations with employees or to represent a management approach that enables developing and drawing out the full potential of people. These lines basically suggest that such HRM practices does very little or nothing to help the employees hone or sharpen or improve their full potential skills. So the answer is B, which is Lucas. Number 30, staff are less likely to change jobs if cooperation is encouraged. And last but not least, dissatisfaction with pay is not the only reason why hospitality workers change jobs. We'll jump down to paragraph 9, where the writer mentions the statement of Merodis and others as achievements and recognition. When these factors are unfavorable, job satisfaction may result. Significantly, though, just fulfilling these needs does not result in satisfaction, but only in the reduction of dissatisfaction. Then, in paragraph 10, there is another remark by Merodis and others. Employees also have intrinsic motivation needs, or motivators, which include such factors as achievement and recognition. Unlike extrinsic factors, motivator factors may ideally result in job satisfaction. These lines suggest that job satisfaction does not come only from pay, rather it may arise from other factors such as achievement and recognition, so that means the answer is C. Let's move on to questions 32 to 35 now. These are the question type, yes, no, and or not given. We'll read through the instructions and questions. Do the following statements agree with the claims of the writer in reading passage 3? Yes, if the statement agrees with the claims of the writer. No, if the statement contradicts the claims of the writer. And not given if it is impossible to say what the writer thinks about this. So let's look at the questions, starting with number 32. One reason for high staff turnover in the hospitality industry is poor morale. Number 33. Research has shown that staff have a tendency to dislike their workplace. Number 34. An improvement in working conditions and job security makes staff satisfied with their jobs. And last but not least, number 35, staff should be allowed to choose when they take breaks during the working day. Now let's go about finding the answers. Question 32. One reason for high staff turnover in the hospitality industry is poor morale. Keywords here are high staff turnover and poor morale. In paragraph 4, lines 4 to 7, the writer gives account of the research done by Morotis and others. It says, in addition, or maybe as a result, high employee turnover has been a recurring problem throughout the hospitality industry. Among the many cited reasons are low compensation, inadequate benefits, poor working conditions, and compromised employee morale and attitudes. The answer here is yes. Question 33. Research has shown that staff have a tendency to dislike their workplace. The key words here are staff, have tendency, dislike, and workplace. In paragraph 6, the writer gives us an account of the research done by Spector and others in 2000. Well, it seems likely that employees' reaction to their job characteristics could be affected by a predisposition to view their work environment negatively. No evidence exists to support this hypothesis. So, the lines clarify the point that there is no proof or evidence that exists to support this hypothesis, that the workers view their workplace negatively. The information contradicts with the given question, so the answer is no. Question 34. An improvement in working conditions and job security makes staff satisfied with their jobs. The keywords here are improvement, working conditions, job security, and satisfied. Now in paragraph 9, the writer gives reference to Erzberg, who showed that when factors like working conditions and job security are unfavorable, job dissatisfaction may result. Then the writer provides the findings of Morotis and others. Significantly though, just filling these needs does not result in satisfaction, but only, and you can go on to read, so the lines are contradictory to the question. Improving working conditions and job security does not make staff satisfied with their jobs, so the answer is no. And question 35, staff should be allowed to choose when they take breaks during the working day. The key words for this question are should be allowed, choose, and take breaks. There is no information regarding taking breaks during the working days in this passage, so the answer is not given. Whew, we're almost done with the paper. Let's finish strong and complete the last 4 questions, which are 36 to 40. This is a summary completion question type. Let's have a look at them now, shall we? Complete the summary below. Choose only one word from the passage for each answer. It's important to note that we need to choose one word and only one. The summary is titled Fun at Work. Choose, Michael, and Stafford carried out research on staff in an American chain of blank. They discovered that activities designed for staff to have fun improved their blank, and that the management involved led to lower staff blank. They also found that the activities needed to fit with both companies' blank and the blank of the staff. A balance was required between a degree of freedom and maintaining work standards. Question 36. Choose, Michael, and Stafford carried out research on staff in an American chain of blank. The keywords here are choose, Michael, and Stafford, and American chain. We'll go to paragraph 11 and lines 1 to 3 to find the answer. For example, choose, Michael, and Stafford conducted a study focusing on staff from a chain of themed restaurants in the United States. So the answer here is restaurants. Question 37. They discovered that the activities designed for staff to have fun improved their blank. Keywords we're looking out for here are activities designed for staff, have fun, and improved. In the same paragraph, line 3, the writer says it was found that fun activities had a favorable impact on performance. So here the answer is performance. Question 38, and that management involvement led to lower staff blank. Keywords, management involvement, and lower. We're still on paragraph 11 looking at line 4. The author says, and the manager's support for fun had a favorable impact on reducing turnover. Keynote, reducing equals lower, manager support equals management involvement, so the answer is turnover. They also can be found that activities needed to do with both companies blank and the blank of the staff. Keywords, activity needed to fit in with both companies. Paragraph 11, lines 4 to 6, the writer says, their findings support the view that fun may indeed have a beneficial effect, but the framing of that fun must be carefully aligned with both organizational goals and employee characteristics. Keynote, activities needed to fit with equals must carefully be aligned with, and company equals organization, staff, and employee. So the answers are for 39 goals and 40 characteristics. That was the whole paper. I hope you were able to use the strategies we've discussed in previous lessons and apply them whilst going through the paper. Join me for the next lesson where we'll look at some helpful tips and tricks for the IELTS reading exam. See you!